Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of DevOps Unbound. DevOps Unbound, for those of you who are not familiar, is a twice a month video program talking about DevOps, hence the name DevOps Unbound. And we try to hit on, just interesting topics within the realm of DevOps and how it relates, and especially in here we are, this is our first show of 2024. There's a lot in store for DevOps in 2024. It has become so intertwined with cloud native and SREs and platform engineering, and of course, some people think CI/CD is synonymous with DevOps, and we'll probably be exploring that as well, and testing and everything else. Observability, you name it, DevOps has a role in it. And, we look at DevOps tools, and we look at DevOps fundamentals and DevOps principles and frameworks, and there's just a lot to talk about in DevOps. I'm really excited for 2024 in DevOps Unbound. I would be remiss if I didn't mention we couldn't put DevOps Unbound on without our good friends at Tricentis. They have partnered with us from day one, and I think this is the third year now for DevOps Unbound. We've been doing this for 3 years, and Tricentis has been there every step of the way with us. If you're not familiar with Tricentis, they are the worldwide leader in automated continuous testing, so do check them out. But we always have an interesting mix on our panels here on DevOps Unbound. Again, for those of you who are not familiar, we do two flavors of this show. One is what you're going to see today. I call it our studio version of DevOps Unbound, where we just have our panel members discussing a topic of interest. The other flavor is our live roundtable, which we do about every 6 weeks, where our audience drives the conversation by using or interacting with our panel members, and those are a lot of fun. So if you haven't had a chance to sit through one of those, do sign up for it. You can find information about DevOps Unbound on TechStrong TV, as well as all 3 years worth of episodes there. You can also find it on DevOps.com. With that being said, let us now jump into today's show. So we left off last year with our heroes, Flash, and fighting the Emperor Ming. No, we didn't do that. But we left off last year with a series called DevOps Building Blocks. And today's show is actually part 4 of DevOps Building Blocks. And it's called Making the Ops in DevSecOps Happen. Right? If I didn't mention it earlier, DevSecOps has become the centerpiece, if you will, of DevOps, right? That's where a lot of the big DevOps companies that, were really kind of bedrocks of the community when I launched DevOps.com in 2014, 10 years ago, are now all about DevSecOps, right? GitLab, JFrog, CloudBeast, to name a few. All they claim to be DevSecOps companies. So, truth be told, that's why I got into DevOps. Was the idea, we didn't call it DevSecOps then, but it was the idea of doing security with DevOps, DevSecOps. We're going to talk about this, but we're also going to talk about the role of ops in DevOps, which for some is always a contentious subject, and I'm sure we'll run into that. So with that being said, let me introduce you to our panel members for today, and couldn't be happier with this panel. I want to lead off with my favorite Aussie in Boulder.
And that was the Andi Mann.
So
Andi,
good to see you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, my friend. Yeah, great to see you.
Andi, if you wouldn't mind, give people a little bit of your background.
Sure. Look, I'm a global CTO. So I'm a founder at Sageable. It's a small analyst firm. Hi, it's me. Covering all things IT ops. So, while I'm not a cyber-focused analyst, I'm absolutely covering a lot of the SecOps function. So very interested to talk about that today. Look, I've got a global career in IT for vendors, for advisors, analysts, as an investor, lots and lots of stuff. But the entire career has been around IT ops. So especially around cloud, automation, DevOps, these sorts of things. I love to these are my people, and I want to stand up for the ops in the crowd.
Excellent. Thank you, Andi. Next, let me invite, she's also a frequent guest here with us, our friend Tracy Bannon. Trace, welcome. Happy New Year. If you would introduce yourself.
Hey, Happy New Year to you as well. Really glad to be here today. Always excited to have these conversations. Like, I've been a couple of decades as a software architect, and that led me into the realm of DevOps and DevSecOps, not because it's what I wanted to do, but it was the only way to get my software into production and make things really happen. And along the way, I ended up learning a whole lot about humans, a whole lot about different types of measures and metrics. Been doing this, like I said, for a long time. I work with a company called the Mitre Corporation, and it's a US corporation. It's federally funded, and we focus on really straight talk for the government. So they don't have enough scientists. They don't have enough technologists. Where are you going to get that from? You're going to create a not-for-profit and give them the latitude to get out there and drive the leading edge. So really excited to be here today, guys.
Thank you, Chase. It's great to have you here. Our third panel member is the rookie on the team. It's his first time here on DevOps Unbound, and we're thrilled to have him. It's not often that I won't attempt to say someone's first name, but this one I tried and tried in the green room to get it, and I couldn't. He goes by the name of Happy, though, which I can't pronounce. And so we're going to call him Happy. It's Kshitij Nigam. And Happy, if you wouldn't lead off with your name pronounced correctly, I think we owe it to you to do that at the very least. And then introduce yourself to our audience.
So, hi, everyone. I am Kshitij Nigam, but everyone calls me Happy. I am a product security engineer in Tricentis. I've been in the industry for 11 years and been hacking stuff way before since I was a kid. And yeah, I'm really happy to be part of the panel.
It's a pleasure to have you, Happy, and thanks for helping us out there with your name. Okay, our last panel member is my co-host here on DevOps Unbound, as well as my partner at TechStrong, Mitchell Ashley. Mitchell, introduce yourself.
Hey, Alan, great to be here. Great to have this panel. We've been talking about bringing the team back together because this is a part 2 of how you put the ops in DevSecOps. So my background, as Alan mentioned, we work together. I'm CTO for the company and I run our analyst business. And also my background is product creator, running businesses in the security and SaaS space and telecom and a bunch of different industries. So kind of been on the product side. I haven't lived in ops as much as probably as Andi, but I love ops, man. Yeah, got to have my ops, right? So it's a great topic to be talking about.
Thank you, Mitchell. You know, I realized I didn't introduce myself. For those who don't know, I'm Alan Shimel, CEO, founder of TechStrong, and we are the people behind TechStrong TV and DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Digital CXO, Cloud Native now, and most recently TechStrong.ai, because everybody's AI today. So thank you for joining us. Thank you to our panel. Let's dive right in. Andi, you said some things that I think kind of made my mind go. And you know, you mentioned SecOps. And, you know, are we in the continuum of DevSecOps, or is there a DevSec? Is there a SecOps? Where does ops fit into the whole DevSecOps thing? Is it the caboose on the end of DevSec? No. Is this a rear engine dragster where ops is the power, pushing Dev and Sec? Maybe. You know, what about testing and DevSecOps, right? Because to me, you know, DevSecOps for many was synonymous with shift left, which meant, you know, move security further in, get your testing done earlier, you know, synonymous with quality and all that good stuff. Is SecOps a different animal, or is it just part of the continuum?
Yeah, I look great question. When you say, "Oh, Andi said some stuff," I instantly start to panic trying to figure out what the heck I've been saying. But yeah, look, it is. I don't actually believe that SecOps is fundamentally different in terms of what we do as collaborators, as communicators, as integrators in the DevSecOps space writ large. It's right there in the name, ops, right? SecOps. There's IT ops, infra ops, data ops, SecOps, right? This is why I say it's all ops. I know it's not all ops, of course, but the amount of time we've spent automating and doing productivity, and goodness me, we're all about happiness again for developers. Where's my ops happiness? No metrics for that. But I actually think that it's really important to bring the security operations into the fold. There's a lot of good work being done already in terms of bringing in security, your application security into development areas. What I'm more focused on is the operational security. So when I start to think about how do I communicate, collaborate, integrate my security team as as someone who leads the operations of maybe a cloud service, a cloud native service, even on-prem services, how do I get my operational security? So here I'm talking about things like secrets management, privileged user and password management, seeing like incident and event monitoring, automated response mechanisms. There's also things around firewall, around network security that operations have to deal with. You can ship all the innovation you want. If it doesn't run safely and securely, you do more damage than you do good. And I think there's a lot we've already done, but bringing ops, all of ops, including SecOps, into the conversation with DevOps, look, it shouldn't be something special. It should just be normal. It should absolutely be that shift left. We should be seeing the security professionals for our operations team coming in and giving advice in planning meetings and so forth. This collaboration has to happen. I think it has to happen more. We're still throwing things over the fence a little bit to our SecOps teams, but there's so much opportunity to collaborate for better outcomes for the whole business.
I'm going to hop on a couple things there. I've taken some notes even on a piece of paper, believe it or not. You said a key word there, Andi Mann, which was teams. You want to bring your team, right? Your team of security, your team of operational specialists to the table. There is a current, I think, misnomer. Folks talk about DevSecOps and they think that we're going to have a team of complete equals that own everything soup to nuts. I just had the argument this morning. I wouldn't say argument, maybe a spirited debate with someone who said, you build it, you run it, always. Yes, that's nice in theory, but that doesn't scale and it doesn't allow for the amazing speciality that we have to have. So I agree that there are separate teams and that's okay. The key, though, is what you were bringing up. They can't be separated from one another. What we have to do is break down where that handoff happens. And I would say, don't just bring sec and ops to the left. I would say bring dev to the right, bring design to the right. Because one of the most impactful things that ever happened to Bannon was a tour of duty with ops. So I had the pager. I had to react to this. I had to understand that I didn't have the accesses because they didn't give me operational access. They gave me dev accesses. How am I going to get those log files? What the heck is going on? What do I actually need to be able to do? It taught me so much, which is why I'm an ops sympathizer, aside from being married to an ops guy. But so the fact that we've got different teams is okay. We have to embrace that. Not everybody is going to have exactly the same talent. That's okay too. But how do we make sure that ops is educating dev? Be at the table with me when I'm putting things together and saying, Bannon, are you nuts? This is not going to work. This is why this is not going to plug in correctly. We're not going to be able to monitor this correctly. How are we going to restart this? Where are you keeping your secrets? Like, I need to be held accountable by ops sitting at the table with me.
Fair?
I think maybe I can jump in.
Sure.
So we classically have two, and I completely agree with you, Tracy. In our pipelines, usually there are two specifically security focused groups. One is product security, which I'm a part of, and then we have security operations. So DevSecOps, whenever we have a pipeline, there's a really close injection. So, okay, secret scanning is what product security is in charge of, but at the same time, storing those secrets, making sure the supply chain is not affected, that's more on the SecOps side. And this is what we need to do. We need to make sure that not only the security guys are involved in both of these, we also make sure that developers are involved. So every time we have a pipeline, let's say let's say GitHub, running all the actions, a alert is generated and everyone is notified. And we try to make sure that the developers have these cyclical knowledge upgrades on whatever news in the market. And hopefully, every time these run and we find something malicious, everyone is involved. So every time we have an incident, there's a war room. We make sure that there is a tester involved who knows the functionality through and through, and a developer involved who actually developed it.
Yeah, I love this, Happy, by the way.
Oh, go
this
ahead.
whole idea of having someone from development in the triage, in the troubleshooting, in the post-incident review, right? You could even start there. We see all the DevOps life cycles, and they always start with planning, right? Great, but if you've already got things in your environment, you've already got things going wrong, throw some security testers into your incident review and see what they say about the security testing regime that you've got and what can be improved, because that's what we're all looking for, right? It's continuous improvement. And I really love that idea, Happy, of bringing security testers all the way down to the right, to a little bit to Tracy's point of bring some of the dev into ops, bring some of the dev test into SecOps. I love that idea, Happy.
Yeah. In fact, internally in Tricentis, we have our own community. It's called Tricentis Cyber Knights. So we have specific developers. We call them security champions, which are basically the security gatekeepers, but they are developers. And this trick community is what we used internally in order to, so we will grab a new topic. We will tell them, hey, how it could be exploited. And then we have got tremendous feedback from developers. And then we usually make them security champions. We onboard them, how we do things. And then it's always a how should I say, feedback cycle. And they would grab more developers. And it's always interesting, whenever we find something new in cybersecurity space. And we have a demo, and it's pretty neat.
I love the idea that you're bringing folks together. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
No,
Mitch.
no,
Oh,
Chase,
great.
we're waiting on you. Go
I
ahead.
was going to say that, I love this idea of making everything transparent to everybody. Where it gets a little bit hairy depends on the organization and the budgets that they've put forth. And I hate to always be pragmatic about this stuff, but having availability to everybody, right? We said have everybody involved. We have to have each kind of role and each kind of skill set involved, but we also have to avoid the massive noise that can happen, especially if you're in an organization that has more than one product. As you've got to start to filter things towards the individuals who need to get after them. And that's where sitting down with Andi's organization, sitting down with the SecOps folks, the operational security folks, and saying, how do we better filter? How do we better reduce the noise so that these devs, these security folks, these testers, these different groups, they get what they need, but they're not completely inundated with the volume that can happen in an enterprise.
I was thinking about what you were saying about the sharing data across tools. And it seems like we're two different eras. There was the era of where one of the biggest silos was between dev and ops. The other big one was between sales and marketing, but that's a whole nother conversation. but they were just human built, silos. And one of the things I think DevOps in general did was kind of not just focus on dev and ops, but kind of elevate a lot of roles: operations, SecOps, security, lots of things, testing, which are all good. But I think the differentiator of where we are now is you don't have to rely on a ticketing system to make sure the ticket goes to the right people, right? That may be part of the workflow that happens when there's an incident that you need to respond to, or there's something in test that you're working together on. And it all goes back to cross-functional teams, right? And your security expert today might not be the same person tomorrow based on schedules and that. So that fluidness of how organizations work differently in a DevSecOps kind of flavor, I think it's something we're all getting accustomed to. And SecOps organizations were probably more used to akin responding to firewall alerts, intrusion alerts, whatever kinds of things, networkish kinds of and host protection kinds of alerts. Now they're dealing with application security things, right? API issue, an app microservice that's causing a security issue venturing into a space it shouldn't be. So there's a lot of cross learning that has to happen. And I think the tools are also part of helping all that come together.
Yeah, I just want to, sorry,
Go
Tracy.
ahead, Andy.
Oh, I just want to key in on one thing there quickly, Tracy, before you go. And that is the idea that DevOps puts a light on a lot of other areas as well. Look, it's never been Dev and Ops, right? I've always said that DevOps doesn't start with Dev and it doesn't end with Ops. It's this big loop and circle and everything. But it's really important that if you only optimize for Dev and Ops, you're moving that bottleneck. There's planning people at the top end, right? There's troubleshooting and triage people at the bottom end. There's documentation and documentation updates. There's a bunch of stuff going on around the life cycle. And obviously securing the operations of your application, the infrastructure it's running on, is part of that life cycle. So that's the one thing I wanted to key in on, Ashley, Mitch. That is just such an important point that it's never just Dev and Ops, but it does shine that light on other areas. If all you're doing is optimizing for DevOps, you're just moving the bottleneck. Sorry, Tracy, you were going to say something before I jumped.
No, not a problem at all, Andy. There are a couple of different things to tag on with this. One is that the domain, the business domain, fintech versus medical versus, getting into, I don't know, pick one. Each area is going to have to work a little bit differently. They have different policies that are in place. There are things that they're going to prohibit individuals from seeing or being around. We see that a lot in healthcare with HIPAA information and who can see what and where and when. So all of the things that we're talking about are true principles. These are the principles that you need to get after. And in your particular context, right, it's really important to figure out where the slider goes. How far, how much can I embed those people? How much information can everybody see? Something when you kicked off today, Alan, it brought to mind a quote that a friend gave to me years ago. His name is David Sisk. He's from Deloitte Consulting. He leads overall architectural practice. And he said something that just got everybody riled up. Say, it doesn't matter how great our processes are. It doesn't matter about the methodologies. The only thing that matters is software running in production. And his whole point was we were doing all of this other stuff and we're grading we were adhering to our methodologies. We were looking at metrics. And if we're not delivering secure, effective solutions that bring value, nothing else mattering. Now, let me turn that back over to Andy.
It's about
he's
the
like
software,
cheering.
stupid.
Oh,
Happy, you were going to say something, yeah?
I'm sorry?
I said, I thought, Happy, you wanted to say something?
No, but
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
on an unrelated topic, I mean, this sounds very interesting because I realize, so ideally, right now, I'm working in product side, but prior to this, I worked for a mobile network operator, and where one of the major tasks that we identified is going through all the mails that come for security. And that's where we implemented some really, I think it might be interesting, that some really fun DevOps stuff. So the idea was we'll take all the mails, we'll dump them to ELK stash, and then based on the output, we will do more, what should I say, investigations. So if it's from CERT, we will grab everything from CERT, put it in a different way. If there are some malicious ones, it will go directly to forensics. No one will touch it. And so this was a way how we could avoid, like what you said, Tracy, when it's automated, there's not a single person who is doing it. It's automatically categorized. And once it's categorized, we know which exactly is the person that would be in charge of it. So because some of our customers would also send us mail, it's important that it's only for the people who have the right eyes for it to be GDPR compliant. And sometimes customers very naively share more than they should. And that's why we made sure we have all those policies when it's scanned through ELK, it goes to specific teams. So everything that has any kind of personal data, we check it, the cyclometric complexity, or for keywords, that will all go through legal first. And if they approve, then only it will go somewhere else. And I know it's not your classic DevOps, but it very greatly reduced our time taken into going through all those emails. So such automation tactics, I mean, right now it would be even could be even easier. So we have something called Innovation Fridays in Tricentis, where we take up new technology and work on that on Friday. So we have something in pipeline where we want to use open source LLMs, like either Mistral 7B or Starcoder, and use that to analyze the data that we have, which includes everything, not only from our, so if you don't know, in Tricentis, we have stuff coming in not only from Azure DevOps, but like other GitHub, GitLab, because we acquired a bunch of companies. So to analyze all that data and then simply ask this LLM for specific questions. And it's still in beta, it's still researching on it, but this would be the next step. So first you analyze based on tags, and then you go a step further and use the LLM. And the best part about open source LLM is you don't send your data anywhere. You have your own server. You set up everything. We use Olama to do it, but there are a bunch of other open source technologies that you could use, and then use it to analyze all the data that you have.
There's just a lot to unpack there, Happy. I'm going to get into some of this.
Okay.
I'm taking notes here because you're actually doing it. I love that. The last time I was actually doing this in my last role as a CTO for a global enterprise video service. Yeah, we were in the middle of the Log4Shell, Log4j stuff. What you're talking about there, Happy, having that operational security team working on triage and troubleshooting in real time. And by the way, to your point, Tracy, yeah, this was not a whole team. This was one person whose part of their responsibility was operational security. But we had to bring development into the room to triage and troubleshoot it. You know, remember the Log4j, it was all about using that open source code and understanding what vulnerabilities are we introducing to our application because of that. And so my point, and I do have one, is that it's so much about more than security per se is what SecOps is doing for you. So you mentioned, Happy, a couple of things about governance, privacy, compliance, compliance with GDPR, and Tracy mentioned compliance with HIPAA. Right? As an operational security person, you're looking at threat vectors, you're looking at leak opportunities, and you're able to help developers to understand where their penetration vectors could be, where their data leakage could come from. Having that knowledge, you keyed straight into what I see as canonical definition of DevOps: communication, collaboration, and integration between teams. So bringing that SecOps team into the remediation meeting, into the incident review meeting, absolutely you're going to get stuff. But bring them into the planning meeting where you're saying, I'm going to use this chunk of open source. I'm going to reuse this code from another application. This is what I think part of what it means to do DevSecOps, to shift left, to bring that expertise and knowledge and share that knowledge by communicating and collaborating with other teams. So I really like the way that you've divided that into sort of development and application and operational security, but also blurring those lines and bringing people together, as Tracy said before.
So maybe I can share some more stuff, and it might be very basic and you might already know this, but just for the sake of argument. So every time we start something, let's say from products, right? We start with the threat modeling. So where we have the architects, security architects, and developers all in the same room. And we basically do not open the room until everyone is in agreement. So we, based on that threat model, it's very easy to do later parts of the DevOps. So once you have a clear architecture, you know what exactly can be done, then you know what are the threats that would come out of it, what are the risks that come out of it. So ideally it is for security, but there have been cases where we find other risks which might not be related to security in a threat model. And then once we have that threat model, your basics are pretty easy, SaaS, DaaS, SCA. But what we realize is that these are not enough. So we go a step further. So in our, and that's one part of it. And the second part is we are never tool dependent. So we make sure once we have the SaaS, which is static application security testing, dynamic application security testing, and source composition analysis done, we move ahead and then we also do some extra stuff. So we use template-based scanning. We won't use secret scanning for only one tool. We would use GitLeaks, Trufflehog, and we keep experimenting. Every time we find that something is not good enough for us or it missed something, we'll go ahead and go a bit further. And also what we realize that we put it like a bug bounty. So we think how an external attacker would attack our infrastructure. And then we make templates based on that analysis, and then we do it. Another thing that we identified for the threat modeling, that it doesn't only help in all the automation and identifying the issues on a product side, it could also be done for an ops side. So whenever we have our cloud infrastructure, or we even have a threat model for the pipeline itself, which runs the threat model to make sure, okay, for supply chain attacks, how can we mitigate it? What could be the attack vectors and how to secure it? So that has been working great for us. And I totally think that threat modeling should be the first place where everyone is together, everyone understand what's going to happen, and then move ahead from there.
It seems like the threat modeling, I love starting there because the security engineers are going to learn a lot about the product, the software, et cetera, how it's architected, where there are potential threats they may not have seen yet. And the developers are going to learn, oh, these are new kinds of ways of attacking our software I'm not familiar with, right? And so you kind of elevate everybody in that conversation. Plus, then you know what to follow through on, right? Here's the things we got to go protect. So it makes a lot of sense, I think, Happy.
There's a technique that I use that is threat modeling, using it as a team building exercise. It isn't going to be the deepest, most expansive threat modeling, but if you have developers, if you have design teams that aren't experienced with that, the first thing that you do is to Andy's point earlier and to Happy's point, bring enough of these experts together and start to go through. It could be that you have existing user stories or existing epics, and that you walk through those and taking it from a different kind of a mind space, right? Because we want to get rid of there being security hobbyists. One of the things that drives me crazy is that we're going to shift security. We're going to shift it left. We're going to shift up. We're just going to shift everything left. No, we're going to start it as early as possible. It doesn't mean that it all falls onto the backs of the developers, but we do need to help folks get smart, right? All of this collaboration and communication is so that we can have shared responsibility and be smarter about what one another do. So if we go back to that idea of threat modeling as a shared team sport, you'd be surprised by just using that kind of a Mad Lib approach, right? As a user, I need to do this thing so that I can usually add on 2 extra qualifiers. I need this. What is this thing that I want to have protected from? And it's interesting to have end users start to say, oh, I need to be concerned about my security. The great example that Alyssa Miller always uses is somebody at a kiosk, and they want to put in an address so that they can find directions to get there, but they don't want anything left behind when they walk away. And so, that is, I need my address protected when I walk away so that nobody else knows it. So there's some very simple techniques to get after exactly what Happy is talking about, but make sure that we're bidirectionally educating everybody.
Sure.
That's absolutely right. And I think, please go ahead.
No, go. Happy. I just facilitate conversation, but I don't really talk much. I'm a very shy person.
I think I keep talking very specific, but this reminded me, what Tracy said reminded me of a very good thing. So we have our annual pen test where an external vendor comes in, tests our application, and this is an annual process. So apart from all our DevSecOps pipelines, and what we realized that when we find an effective vulnerability, we would sit with the tester and we create a test case in their functional test case, which would try to exploit it. And then once that is done, we have some really great testers in Tricentis, and they would make all possible variations of it. So now we we have this extra set of security tests as a part of functional testing pipeline, and they are added to the continuous workflow. So this makes sure that the vulnerability never occurs again. And that's another thing where we are very close, like the testers and the security engineers and developers are really close to each other. And we make sure that everything is done in a pipeline, and the vulnerability never occurs again. We also have deployed some very cool tricks there. So if you are aware of the out-of-band security testing, which means the response you do not get on the, so you send a request and you get a response. That's how you typically identify vulnerabilities. But sometimes what happens is you send the request, but you can tell the response to go to a different server. That is one of the techniques that people use, and it's called out-of-bound or blind SQL injection. So all the blind vulnerabilities are exploited in this way. So we have our own server that's always running. And whenever the workflow starts, the server is starting. So even if the response is blocked by our WAFs, we make sure that the vulnerability is removed from the code itself. So even if the WAF blocks the response, the exploit goes to the another server, and we make sure we check the data at the end of the workflow that there's nothing there. And I think out-of-band security testing is a pretty cool approach.
Yeah,
So, folks, go ahead, Andy.
I certainly agree with Happy there. And what I'm hearing from you, Happy, is sharing this knowledge has real implications and real outcome to how you deliver software and services to your customers, right? Sharing and collaboration, largely to Tracy's point, you're not trying to create security experts out of everyone. People say, "Oh, DevSecOps means everyone does security." Well, yes, but also no. Everyone does some security, but what it's really about for me is sharing that knowledge and collaborating on resolving problems and planning better. And so sharing, collaborating, what you're talking about is making T-shaped people, who can understand across those boundary lines. But you don't need your application security people, your application testing people to be security experts. You need your security experts to work with those people to create the continuous testing environment, which captures all of those problems you're talking about, Happy, that you find in those meetings, and redrive it. It's the feedback loop, redriving it back into security testing when you do find vulnerability, to make sure you only find that vulnerability one time, and every other time it's blocked, it's solved, it's fixed, because you've done that feedback loop, you've done the work of communicating, collaborating, of having the security operations team making the application testing team better at what they do. They're not taking over from it. So I really love the way that you're using this, these known good outcomes, these known best practices, for want of a better word, and there are many better words, to drive that aspect of continuous testing through the feedback loop. That is so DevOps, Happy. I love it.
And absolutely what you said is so true. Because testers who do this functional testing and know the product through and through. And I like to give this example. So we told them, hey, this is a vulnerability that we found, and maybe you could add it to functional test. And he said, okay, how does it work? So I explained it. Also, the person is part of Trick community. So he was very intrigued, and he said, okay, so it was an XSS payload. The idea is you send it to a URL. So DOM-based XSS, and gives you a response. And he said, you know what? We have like n number of different URLs. So how can I test it on all of them? I'm like, that's great. And then we made a list of payloads. So we have like 1,200 payloads. And he made sure that he runs it parallelly to all those endpoints. So there we found some things that even our vendor missed. And our testers actually found that out through their continuous testing. So absolutely, that's I realized that educating as well as collaborating with other team members really, really helps making your product secure.
But Happy, you're bringing up something that folks are not always aware. In the environment that you're talking about, there had to be a lot of leadership support, leadership buy-in. People have to be willing to be vulnerable in those cases. So a developer made a mistake, okay, or humans make mistakes. So when we're learning these things, there's a different mental attitude that comes with celebrating the fact that we found this and we're now going to automate against it. And we're going to teach people about what that flaw was, as opposed to, hey Bannon, you caused a SQL injection and you are, you're just not a good part of this team. Your numbers are low. And that's a lot different than what it was 15 or 20 years ago. We would look at defects by developer and try and figure out, why are they allowed to do this? And now when we look at those kinds of bits of it, I see Andy smiling there. When we look at that kind of information now, I'm looking at, hey, Bannon looks like she's needs some help in this area, or Andy needs some help in this area, or our security group needs some help. And so it's a very different mindset than maybe what Alan, Mitch, myself, Andy may have experienced. And there are still the folks our age, our experience leading companies that need to be able to get on board with a little bit of a different attitude, a little bit of a different approach than what we've done in the past. That culture shift can be a little bit dicey sometimes.
Agreed. Guys, we are way out of time. I didn't want to stop the train though, and having Andi Mann and Tracy Bannon on a panel and running out of time because what a novelty. But
name a pair that goes together better than us running out of time.
Exactly.
But guys, it's a tremendous conversation, and I will tell you, just to wrap the bow on this, right? It does my heart good to hear this. These aren't elementary conversations we're having. We're no longer saying, does chocolate go with my peanut butter? Right? Does sec go with dev and ops? We're beyond that. We're talking about collaboration and working together in cross-functional teams, and not as a novelty, but as real life. And Happy's giving us some really great examples of what Tricentis themselves are doing, right? And building their software and working from a DevSecOps point of view. And to that, bully on that, right? Andy, you remember when we were doing the DevSecOps event at RSA 7-8 years ago, and it was a hard sell. It was a hard sell. It's not a hard sell anymore. Security's part of this. DevSecOps. I'm going to leave it with that. Mitchell, you want to take the last word?
Yeah, I think the common thread for me is collaboration through all the things that we talked about. And whether it's you punish people for mistakes or you celebrate and learn, you don't do that on your own. You do that by leadership that's helping people work together to solve tough problems and get great software out the door. So I'm glad that's between what Happy and Tracy and Andy brought to the table.
Absolutely. Happy, Tracy, Andy, thank you for joining us on this edition of DevOps Unbound. Again, many thanks to Tricentis for being our sponsor for this show for going on 3 years now. We will be back with another episode of DevOps Unbound. You can check techstrong.tv for the schedule on that. But until then, this is Alan Shimel for DevOps Unbound and TechStrong. Have a great day, everyone.